hopefully I'm okay here. So, welcome back to the SciCast, another episode of the favorite show that you've ever seen. I'm your host, Dr. J.
I'm the other guy, Ben.
He's the incumbent.
The other guy, Ben. Yeah, we're back again today, after a brief hiatus again. I've had a sick daughter recently, so we've been getting her on our schedule as a little bit. She has her own schedule, so. Of course. Otherwise, so yeah, we found time. We're back again and come up with a new subject that I believe hopefully you'll find interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I know I definitely did. I hadn't heard much about it until I started looking into it.
What is the subject?
We're discussing the Nazca lines.
Nazca lines from Peru, South America.
In a desert region, up high, very high arid region.
It's actually, like on the top of a mountain, actually.
Spelled Nazca. So if your pronunciation,
if you're trying to Google that right now.
That's what it comes up at. Quite interesting. Many theories of why they're there, how they got there, and what their purpose was. So we're going to try and discuss a few of those options, reasonings there today, and hopefully provoke some interest and you find it interesting.
I know we do.
Yeah, it was very interesting. So, quick summary, I guess. It's a bunch of Neolithic, geolithic, excuse me, not Neolithic, geolithic shapes, designs on this very high, basically up on the mountaintops here in this desert region of Peru.
Yeah, these designs specifically are in specific shapes, like hummingbirds, monkeys. Apparently, one looks like a human/alien hybrid.
Yeah, they even whales.
Yeah.
A giant spider is another one.
Yeah.
A lot of animals. Plus, they actually have a lot of just geographic shapes as well.
Yes.
So, the very reasoning the reason I guess that they're seen due to the nature of the region is apparently the theory is that the region is riddled with these reddish brown pebbles.
Yes.
An area of there, and so they've basically kind of made a trench about just a few inches deep, really, and exposed the whitish grayish clay surface underneath. But the interesting fact about these is that you can't see these shapes from the ground. You have to either be flying or up on a higher hilltop to view them.
Because these things are gigantic, like football field size, I'm guessing.
Some of them were saying that they were as large as 200 meters, almost 600 feet, across, so a couple football fields. Others are a lot smaller as well. So why they were made is, I guess, another interesting fact.
It's very...
Because you can only see them from very up high. Most of the mapping of the region, I guess, has been done through, airplane, helicopter.
Yeah.
They're over couple of different mountaintops, actually.
So the theory is, well, it's a highly more likely theory that at some point in the past that for some reason it hasn't been proven yet, but maybe they had some kind of aircraft. I mean, because they have also found little figurines of things that look like airplanes. And it would make sense, well, in some way, that maybe these shapes were where specific spots you could land or different airfields.
Right, because some of these are actually very abrupt starts and stops and perfectly straight. It actually looks like a landing strip.
Yeah.
We were just recently, they were featured on the show Ancient Aliens from the History Channel.
Which is where I first heard about them.
Right, and he showed me a recent episode, one of the episode they were featured, and the one, eerily similar, it looks almost like an aircraft carrier.
That's a good way to put it.
It was, you have the main runway and then there's this tiny little offshoot. I mean, and it's, from the sky, perfect rectangles and intersecting lines. Yeah. So, I mean, it actually looks like a runway. And where they tied into this, they actually tied in a small story about World War II, where U.S. aircraft were landing on these small islands in the Pacific to these cultures that had never seen anything like this before.
Right.
Well, and they thought it was great. You know, there's these planes coming out of the sky. They had never seen anything.
Giant metal birds.
But as they described them, you know, they were obviously U.S. planes. Well, they were dropping in supplies, and they thought it was great. They were claiming it was, you know, the gods bringing them gifts and stuff.
Right.
Well, after World War II was over, they're like, what happened?
They all left?
Yeah, they left, and obviously there's a shortened version of it. They were like, where did they go? This was great when they came, and they brought us gifts. So it came back that they actually built, like, small wooden structures of these planes, trying to, like, summon the planes back because they thought it was so great. Which gives, I guess, is the theory as to why the Nazca lines were made was possibly visits from extraterrestrial beings.
Right. Well, because
that gives theory to why they were made and why, you know, from a different time period. Because these Nazca lines, actually, they said they carbon dated back to somewhere, they're estimating between years 400 to 650 AD. So, I mean, almost 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. So, I'm guessing at some point, maybe that these shapes of the monkeys and whatnot are supposed to be signals for aliens, you know, when they're peeking at Earth, you know, like, hey, that's where they are.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll come back there.
Yeah, they came there. So it was their, another small theory, they were saying possibly irrigation lines. Because the region is so dry and arid, which leads to why they're so well preserved today. The arid is
because
very dry, very little wind. So, and there's really not much Mother Nature is doing to erode or...
It's a very slow weathering effect there.
So they're very well preserved.
So with the irrigation, it could be that maybe they were like art, you know, they were making their farmland into specific shapes or something like that.
Right, to try and, you know, similar to what, you know, the Chinese do with like their rice paddies and things, funneling things into trenches and whatnot. So where they're going, their theories, why, you know, it goes along why they're, how did they make them? Is the other thing. Because you can only see them from the sky.
Which means, how, you know, when they were drawing them, let's say, either they had, well, they could have been really, really good and just had a great sense of space and where they were. Or they had somebody mark them from the air. And
it could have been there. As I was reading, found in one entry somewhere that they actually found like some wooden stakes and some string lines. Almost. That they found near the site that carbon dated back to approximately the same time period when they may have been made. So they're saying that they could have just very well mapped it out onto the ground. But then goes back, why make something so large like that you can only see from the sky when at that point in history
they were still supposed to be, you know...
There was no flight.
The technology was still pretty primitive.
Right. But, you know, it's why do things like that? But then again, you know, why did the Indians make the effigies out of, you know, the animals and whatnot? They were so large you could really only see them from high up either. Or it was, you know, worshipping the animal spirits or whatever. So, but...
Those are pretty cool, too. I think they should do that in Ancient Aliens, too. They brought that out.
Did they? I know that. So, yeah, it's possibly a summoning form of worship.
Right.
Who knows? But very popular to think, though, that they had help from aliens to actually do this. Because they are so intricate.
And, you know, well done. I mean, you look at it and you say, hey, that's a bird. Or you don't say, like, oh, I could see a little mistake there or anything. And it's pretty fascinating.
Another thing is, I guess, that they did mention that they were actually trying to, at certain parts of it, they were trying to map out constellations. With the astronomy, you know, as far as, you know, because I believe it was another part I was researching, they said that some of the shapes do roughly represent constellations that we that we associate today. I know they mentioned Orion. There was one similar to Orion. I believe Ursa Major and Minor. Or else they say there that they roughly correlate to that there. And they are saying that it could have just been the positions in the sky at the time as well. They maybe look just a little different.
Yes. That brings me up to with the Egyptian pyramids. That the way that the pyramids from the sky, when you look down, the 3 pyramids, that they actually align with the 3 stars of Orion's belt.
Oh, they do?
That's, what the theory is. Some people say, no, not exactly. But like you said, because, thousands of years ago when they were made, they were in a different position. The stars were in the sky.
Oh, sure, just on the planet itself.
Right,
Where they were seen from the ground. So, like you said, why they were made. Very fascinating, like you said, if you go and look them up and look at the pictures.
I'm going to try to see if I can edit some of these pictures in. Because that'd be nice. Just pop up and
see a few of these, because they are quite amazing. I mean, a lot of it, not even, what I found more fascinating was just more of the geographic shapes and the way that they all tied together and the lines look so perfect. It's amazing to think that, a culture, the Nazca culture, could have done this 2,000 years ago. And that, obviously, they're still there today, obviously due to the region, but they're still there. And that you can see these things, and what were they doing? Because the one image, it looks like, it's almost on the side of the mountain.
Yeah,
it looks like the humanoid, I guess, shape, and it's not necessarily more of an animal, but
it could be humanoid. I think people liken it to a monkey as well, but that's also.
But the one other, the big monkey shape that they refer to, I mean, obviously looks more like a monkey. You can see the tail almost spiraling around. I think the other real impressive one that I saw was the spider.
Yes.
And the legs, the way they had the legs shaped around. It was fascinating. But some of these other animal shapes that they came up with, I guess I didn't get looking into it far enough what a lot of the specific animals were. But are they native to the region?
I was going to say, there was another episode where they went more into it. They said a lot of those animals aren't native to Peru.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like, I guess Peru is on the coast, so I guess they could have seen a whale, perhaps. But to be able to, I mean, it looks similar, but I guess some of them were. I'm trying to think. I'm going to look at my different.
Because we do our research here on the SciCast.
I guess a hummingbird.
Yeah, there was a hummingbird, but I'm not sure where those are native though.
I mean, I know they're obviously here in North America, but I don't know if they're down there. I mean, some of the other shapes I guess they had were different. They had some plant shapes too.
Right. Because I'm thinking, I know hummingbirds need some kind of wooded area, and Nazca doesn't have very many giant wooded areas.
Well, it's a desert region basically. So, where they got the idea for some of these shapes, I guess, is why.
I mean, sure. I mean, they could probably walk around and the rest of the continent, but
and come back with an idea. But yeah, some of these seemed a little. Where did they get some of these? Or especially being in a desert region, why would they be drawing pictures of whales, sharks, and orcas and stuff? I mean, it's a desert region away from the coast.
Yeah.
I mean, just that far away at this point, in our age, the trip probably wouldn't be all that far. But at that period in time, I mean, that would have been, a month's journey, perhaps, just to get to the coast?
At that point, they hadn't had horses. They might have had other kind of beasts of burden or something like that.
Yeah, as far as that, I'm not exactly sure. I didn't research as far as that. But to make that trek would have been monumental at that time. I mean, that would have been... I mean, for them, it could have been a year's journey to go to the coast and back with, a group of people.
Because you had to carry this, enough food on the way.
Food, you would have to hunt and all of that, finding your stuff. It would have been monumental at that time.
Which, I guess, suppose would make sense that they were if they made representation of these animals, because they don't get to see them very often.
Right. So if they did make this trek and brought it back, it obviously does make a lot of sense that they would want to depict these creatures and remember what they were like. Which, you know, they brought up another interesting point of the show. Why did they draw what they did?
Sure.
Because, you know, you look at it from the big picture that they saw from some of the big aerial views. I guess not necessarily dipping into science fiction almost a little bit. If you would take that out and put it onto, I mean, it would almost look like a star map. Ooh. I mean, that's kind of my thought you got out of it right away.
Very Stargate-ish.
Yeah, there you go. As a reference, if you're familiar with Star, I mean, you look at that stuff. I mean, if you were to put it on a black background and align the, you know, put stars and stuff, I mean, just think about that. I mean, it would almost look like a star map. Rough image, you know.
Maybe it's an invitation to another planet.
Well, yeah, that's where.
Yes.
You know, and this leads into. I mean, we picked the Nazca lines just because. I mean, not something that is. I guess a lot of people have probably heard of. I hadn't heard of it.
I don't think it's taught in a United States public school. So
I mean, it was something that I hadn't heard of myself until just a month ago that we had kind of mentioned it. But it's kind of along the lines of talking, you know, different structures around the Earth. The Giza pyramids.
The Mayan pyramids.
The Mayan pyramids. Stonehenge. Possibly like the Great Wall of China. The figures on Easter Island. The heads on Easter Island. You know, they're kind of these odd structures, and not necessarily odd, but fascinating.
Very intricately made for their time period.
That the fact that they're still standing today. What was the one other structure that I had never heard of?
Pumapunku, I think.
Yes, that's it. Pumapunku. They're saying that what dates back almost 17,000 years.
Yeah,
and they're put together not with mortar. It's just stones.
They did specifically mention that in order to get your structure to last, you know, thousands of years, you shouldn't use mortar because mortar has to be maintained and it falls apart easily. So you have to create these blocks and fit them together perfectly, without, you know, so they can keep their shape and it won't break down over the time.
And Pumapunku, that was located in South America as well.
That was in Bolivia.
Bolivia, yes, there you go, Bolivia.
Which is right next to Peru.
So it is in South America, so it's some of there. But they were saying the lines on there were so...
it was those rocks were put together so well that you couldn't get a razor blade through it.
Yeah, they were fit that tightly together is why they're lasting today. They were saying, and the material that they were made out of.
Diorite.
Diorite, which are saying that basically the only structure or substance on Earth that is harder than diorite is a diamond.
Yeah. So
that these lines and the way they fit these blocks together.
So you either have to go through a lot of granite to chip away at diorite,
right,
or you have to use something harder.
You know, using a diamond to chip away from. Which, in just a few pictures I saw, just, you know, glancing at them, I mean, the lines were so, you know, we're talking
millimeter
about...
thin.
Yeah, and cut so perfectly, and the same depth all the way across.
And they looked like they were drilled holes, too.
Yeah. I mean, amazing structure, amazingly built. I mean, and we were talking about the Nazca lines, which are only approximately 2,000 years old.
Right.
Roughly, this is what they're guessing. We can say there, and they're going back even for... How is this possible? You know, which leads to the theory that we were visited before.
There's also theories out there that civilization has grown and fallen many times over Earth's history, which is possible too. You know, if you're not into the whole alien intervention kind of theory.
Which kind of leads back into our last podcast on panspermia, which is how we became to be. Because, I mean, they even make many references to that the Bible itself makes references to visitors from on high. I believe they specifically reference the book of Ezekiel.
Enoch, which is part of the Bible. Because,
yes, Enoch is, they said, reference basically in a couple of sentences in the traditional Bible. But if you do discuss him and look up, there are several books.
I think the Book of Enoch is also known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Very similar to that.
That I'm not sure about. But yeah, they have the book. If you go and look him up, the Book of Enoch, he has a lot of stuff saying, and the theory on him was that he was basically taken for a period of a very long period of time.
Yeah, he was taken into the sky by these gods. So they likened it to an alien abduction, literally speaking.
We were talking today, yeah, and that they taught him, astronomy and mathematics and several other things, and then returned him, which is why that they were able to take on some of these tasks that they were today. Because to be able to do some of these tasks, they were impossible without some sort of advanced assistance. I mean,
some kind of machinery at least.
Or machining, or like you said, just take on the pyramids. Look at the tasks, because they were. What were they mentioning? That they said the largest pyramid in Giza's took like just over 22 years.
Well, it's written down that it only took 22 years, which is probably unlikely. There's probably a translation.
Which they were talking today with modern technology today. The stuff. I mean, the most up-to-date stuff we have today. The equipment we have today, the mathematics, the precision and everything that we have today, they couldn't do it in 22 years today. How on earth?
They referenced that they said if you did it in 22 years, based on the amount of material that's in the pyramids, you would have to cut, transfer, and place one of those giant stones every 9 seconds.
Yeah, that's what. Every 9 seconds. Yeah. I mean, we're talking stones that weigh tons. Tens to hundreds of tons. Yeah. And with basically man and animal power.
With guys pulling it up a 2-mile ramp.
Right. Yeah, ramps that went 2 miles. Without some other form of. Well, they said that not even just the existing outside structure is what's impressive about the pyramids, it's the inside.
While you're making it, you have to, if you're making it by stone, which means you have to, as you're making the structure itself, you have to leave openings inside the middle, each layer as you're putting it up, to leave those openings for...
To put the tombs in there and your air pathways, which they did, the inside was made out of granite. Yeah. They said was a lot of granite. So... to be able to accomplish that
the logistics of that is insurmountable.
Right. I mean, just the planning and the blueprints. Blueprints in our terms to be able to accomplish an amazing feat. That was something much more bigger task than just drawing some lines in the ground, so to speak. Yeah, big time. Than the Nazca lines. I mean, that's just digging a little trench here and moving it out. So it leads to all of these other things that. Lead to, we had to have, definitely probably visitors, where the Bible explaining a godly being, which you think back to the times when they're talking about that, how else would they explain it at the time?
Right.
That's what was plausible at the time versus, if you were to go back to that time now and say, oh no, it's an alien, and they're like, well, what are you talking about, alien?
Right. It's not an alien, it's an angel.
Yeah.
Or some kind of godlike being. Because they do reference, I want to say, I'm trying to remember what the guy was saying, that when he did see this, I think he saw somebody coming down, and it sounded like the roar of a waterfall. Yeah. Which you could probably liken to it, because if you didn't know what a rocket was, that...
I mean, you think about it, it would sound like a rushing roar of a waterfall. Yeah. Within a metallic object that said, like wheels within wheels.
Which could be cogs in a...
Yeah, I mean, think about it. What you go back 2,000 years, how else would you describe it?
Because their vocabulary was much limited compared to ours.
Right. But it can,
the frame of reference.
So it's... If you go that way, look at it that way, it's very plausible. I mean that you can look at the Bible itself, and there's tons of references to these things. Yeah. To visitors, not to discount that. I can't think of the guy's name. The author that wrote Chariots of the Gods.
Eric von Daniken.
Yeah, there you go. he himself said he's raised very devout Catholic there, and he started to research these Nazca lines. And he says he still believes in God, which is fine, you know, there, but there may be other explanations to go along with all of this stuff as well. Not saying that either one is right or wrong, but it kind of goes back to that, you know, they may all correlate together at some point. And we're just trying to figure, like you said, we're still trying to figure this all out and how it all fits together.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, man. These things. I can just sit there and watch this. I know we reference Ancient Aliens a lot, but it actually, it kind of makes you rethink history, because they don't teach you much of this in school. So when I did first start seeing this, you know, on the History Channel, which is a reputable station.
I had History Channel. I mean,
it's just, you're like, really? Well, because you're like, you never get taught this, and so you just, whatever is in the books is what's real.
Because I think it not necessarily a radical point of view, but it's considered unconventional. Right. I think would be a better point to put it.
It would be good.
Because it's either you teach, you know, and that's what the schools are, either, you know, you either teach evolutionism or creationism. Right. You know, which is, you know, obviously creationism, you'll get into more religious schools, and, you know, evolutionism is what's taught in your public schools, I guess, more there. Your separation of church and state.
Well, the problem, I mean, it is kind of understandable, because when you have these structures, you don't really have anything that tells you how they were made or why they were made. So you can't really put it down technically in history and say this is because of this. Right. So it's more of it could be this and it could be that. So there's nothing really concrete in order to tell you. So that's why I think this show is great, because it gets you to look at things from a little bit of a different perspective. Yeah, that's what I like about it.
And, like they said, they don't try and say, oh, this is the way it has to be, but
it's a plausible way of looking at it.
Yeah, there you go. It's a plausible way. It's not necessarily saying that this is the way, but
the problem is
definitely impossible.
Sometimes more conventional archaeologists or historians will kind of just throw it out, because a lot of them liken it to, they have, if, let's say, Ancient Aliens and all this, what they talk about, is true, that means they've been teaching the wrong stuff their entire career. Right. And it's kind of, you know, I mean, you could say it's their egos, or they just don't want to change their ways, or...
I don't want to admit fault. I mean, who wants to admit that they were wrong?
Right.
But, so, yeah, it's definitely the way they look at it different, and trying to come up with things that way.
Yeah. And I know Von Daniken, he's had all kinds of problems with other historians about his theories. But he keeps trucking.
Keeps plugging along, keeps trying to go along with all this. So, it's very great. I think it's a great way. I think it should be at least offers, you know, an option. Just say, if they, even as a footnote in the classroom, saying, it's a possibility, it's out there. Right. Because I think we're getting, you know, closer and closer all the day to, I mean, you know, they're wanting to push out further and further into, you know, into space. Yeah. More exploration. Because a lot of these, if you look at it, a lot of these texts are the hieroglyphics on the cave walls and the books, you know, they do kind of make reference that they were, greater beings were here, and they will come back again at some other later time. Yeah. And the correlation you see between all these other places is that, okay, you have the Mayan pyramids, the Egyptian pyramid. Okay, very similar structures, but at the time, separated by oceans. But, you know, very similarly built. You know, different pyramids all over, and, you know, and on much smaller scales.
Some of them are, but like they said, the Mayan temple, was it Teotihuacan? One of the ones over there. Yeah. It wasn't Machu Picchu, it was the other one near it. But anyway, it has the same, what do you call it? Base
dimension.
Footage of the base.
Yeah, the base is like the same size of the square.
It's only half as tall though, but it's the same width.
Yeah, they instead of just going up at a straight angle like that, they came up, made a little bit of a flat area, came up.
They put a stairway.
Yeah, they made more stairways, so that decreased the height a lot. But yeah, so it's there. Or you go and there were other. They depict images of these beings, if you will, continents. They compare Australia and I can't remember the other continent. It was either North or South America. I don't remember which one. Either one. Same. I mean, the picture is. I mean, beside artistic impression. You go ask. I mean, that would be no different than asking, hey, you go draw something. You go draw a basket of fruit, and I'll go draw a basket of fruit, and it'll be two different, it'll both be baskets of fruit, but different interpretation. Yeah. Whereas, say, they're looking at these beings, it's like they have the same, like, it would have been a halo or a helmet possibly around them. Very similar face structures.
Which during the show they had brought up the fact, or the idea, I wouldn't say fact, obviously, that the halo comes from the idea that they had a helmet on. Right. But it was like a clear acrylic, something like that, so you wouldn't, you're like, what are you looking at? Is there something around them?
So yeah, it would give the appearance. I guess a better example would be is, if we were asked to draw the same person. Right. You put a person over there and we were to draw the same person. Obviously they would look different, but the same. So, but these are separated by continents. Right. So how would they be seeing the same thing when this was, thousands of years ago?
So they're saying maybe some visitors came by and went to different areas of the world and shared their knowledge with these different cultures in our past.
So the other reason, why did they choose a specific area here? In one theory, that the one Giorgio
Tsoukalos.
This guy right here. He suggested was that if they were to come to Earth, to take an example, the Nazca region in Peru, he said would be.
It's abundant in raw materials.
He said that would be the place to go for a sampling, because he said of the abundant raw materials, gold, uranium, and all the raw materials that are in the region there. It would be a perfect sample.
Nobody's been quarrying that area.
Right. He said it's so rich in the area there that perfect example of what Earth's makeup would actually be.
It's like a Mass Effect. You go down there and you take up all your samples of what you're trying to get. So you probe down,
Probe down there, yeah.
Say, okay, this thing's got some coal, iron, gold, silver.
Yeah. So, that's the region, possibly the glyphics, why they're trying to summon them to that area. Although, at the time that these the lines were made, how would these people know?
Sure.
That, what was of value there, that's going back to, how would they know that gold would be valuable or uranium would be valuable? If they were looking at it, at that time, if you were to give, 2,000 years ago, here's a pile of gold, here's a pile of coal, here's a pile of uranium. What would those people at that time choose?
Different color rocks.
I'm going to choose the coal. It makes heat. It burns. You make fire.
Right.
Gold, man, what do I do with that? This uranium, what do you do with that? That makes me sick.
I was going to say, it makes me feel funny.
Yeah, I feel funny inside. Which goes to, this is why, all the perspective of how time goes, and now they're looking at things so much differently anymore, why that area would be there.
Well, it's always tough to look back on it, because we're thinking about what we think of the current world, or comparing it to what somebody else would think of it in the past. What would they do with, let's say, an aircraft? They landed, and they probably wouldn't know what to do with it. But they might probably worship it, like those cargo cults in Pacific, or giving them, let's say, you give them an iPhone or something.
Right. Yeah, you go there. I mean, you go back there. If you were to give it, present them with a set of knives, let's say, like a nice set of knives, or there's an iPhone. Well, they're gonna go, well, I want the knives. I can, kill animals, skin animals, whatnot. Right. And
this iPhone would help my family.
Blah. Yeah. No. What does this do? I get no service here in the cave.
Don't worry, a couple hundred years we'll make a tower.
We'll make that there. So I like the way that time has come and that there actually is people out there looking at things from a different perspective and exploring different options now instead of...
The iPhone brings up an interesting point too.
Expensive piece of crap. All right, I'm sorry, did I say that out loud?
Well, there's always that. But let's say the story of Moses coming off the mountain, when he's got his 2 stone tablets, his 2 tablets that contained the information that God wanted him to share. What if it was an actual tablet computer? It stored all the information on it. That kind of thing, like he came out there, chatted with some aliens, and they gave him some kind of machine. So in a way, it's just
it's like an ancient version of a computer, similar to like what the Mayan calendar almost. Right. I mean, as far as they're a way of computing and tabulating things.
Right.
Very very possible.
Because when let's say somebody from Egypt those thousands of years ago, when they see a tablet, they're saying, what's it made of? It's probably stone. Because, they don't know about metal. Well, I'm sure they might know about metal, but some kind of...
As far as... Made out of. Right, or, silicone, making silicon chips and, circuits and all of that stuff was,
And if it's got things written on it, obviously it must have been chiseled.
Yeah, it was chiseled. So, well, which brings to the point was when they actually wrote things down at that time, it was actually very significant events in their lives to actually, if they were to actually take the time to write something down, because at that, so much of their time was dedicated for shelter, food and clothing. I mean, basic survival.
Right. On top of that, I'm sure not many people knew how to do it, except for, I'm guessing, the richer,
right?
Who had
very few, the very educated. Yeah, and where were they? How were they educated by?
Right.
Or who were they educated and how were they done?
Yeah.
So, which for them to actually take the time to write something down was very significant for that time. That's why I think they need to really analyze a lot of these writings further and try. It'd be so great. If you actually knew what they were trying to get across. Because I believe a lot of it today, and that's just in my opinion, a lot of it is interpretation.
Yeah, a lot of it,
because you can look at these ancient symbols and go, oh, they're meaning this. Well, you show it to another expert and he goes, no, they're trying to get across this because of the correlation of here and there.
Because even today, when you're trying to, a lot of the times throughout history, you have to translate to different languages.
Right.
And obviously that's a huge always barrier when you're translating from, let's say, Latin to Greek and Greek to English. A lot of things get lost in translation because some languages don't have words for this, and vice versa.
I mean, not to make fun, I love you, honey, my wife, but, I mean, we're trying to explain the same thing, but it's done in two different, very different ways. So, we're looking at the same thing, but we explain it 2 very different ways. As far as basic situation to try and correlate to. Sure. We were trying to explain to our mother-in-law how to heat up a bottle for her child. She explained it one way, I explained it a different way. We were both saying the exact same thing, but using vastly different ways to, but so the mother-in-law's going, huh? We kind of confused her a little bit, but then, we both got the point, right. It's actually, said, okay, yeah, we're saying the same thing, just 2 different ways.
Yeah.
Which I think is a lot of, gives the, you're talking about the continents and the hieroglyphs, between, Australia and Egypt and South America and North America into Europe. You're talking about 5 very different regions. They could all be talking about the same race, alien race, we'll call it. But they're all expressing it in a different way. And so trying to find the pieces that correlate, that's I think is the big challenge right now.
Sure.
Which I think, time travel would be so cool.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as we were watching that Ancient Aliens thing, I'd be like, what would you want to do if you were to able to go back in history? When would you want to go? As I'm watching that, I'm thinking, God, it'd be great to go back to when they were building those pyramids to actually see how they were doing it.
Yeah, because that's one of the most gigantic mysteries in human history.
Right.
Was how they were able to build those things.
One of the 7 wonders of the world or whatever. And, how they were able to construct that and maybe, be able to watch it in fast forward or something, you know.
Little time lapse.
Yeah, and it would be fascinating to see how they did that, and I was like, okay, then you could possibly see, did they really have help, you know? I mean, or did they just, you know, maybe we're misinterpreting their time frame wrong, you know?
Sure.
They're saying 22 years,
right.
where it could have been, you know, hey, we forgot to add a 0 or something. It could have been 220.
Yeah, because there's a possibility that the Egyptian word for 20 or 2000 is very similar. You know, maybe one letter difference.
Right.
So you know, it's very easy to mischaracterize.
Right. You forgot to add as there. You know, they say, like you said, you write down 2. Well, their version of 2, where they're talking about it, would be, you know, they're actually trying to represent 20 years by writing it 2.
From what I remember, the Egyptian language too was a lot different than modern language. Because I don't think they used an alphabet. They depict. If you wanted to say a word, you just write what you're trying to say. Like when you say "eye," you write a picture of an eye, like an eyeball.
Right.
You know, and then that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Kind of like
much more symbolic.
Trademark kind of pictures. The way to think of it now would be like, you wouldn't, when you're trying to write down McDonald's, you wouldn't spell out McDonald's. You just write the golden arches.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that's a very good modern correlation to it.
And when you're trying to translate that to English or any other language from modern times, it's tough to do because what are they trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
As far like I said, it's all perspective.
Yeah. Really,
I mean, how you're looking at it, and you know, it's like all how you're raised and how your culture is. Mm-hmm. And I believe a lot of that is being broken down more today. So in modern times, we're able to have that. But I mean, even today, they have like you said, the language barriers with all the international business and stuff, where you're getting higher up. These multilingual people are being valued a lot more in the international business world. Especially, I remember going through my classes. They were talking, business classes, they were talking, like you said, if you were to go to the Middle East for a business, expect to wait there all, you know, say you had a 9 o'clock appointment with some guy, you could wait there all day long and not be seen. It's nothing for them to have wait all day. Their sense of time, they have no sense. Right. They're going to take their time. Their business is important. Yes, they still do want to see you, but they're going to take care of this first before they, you know, everything is in order.
Right.
If it takes 2 hours to accomplish a task that you think should be able to be done in 10 minutes, they're going to take the time to do it. So, you know, you could be expected to sit there for a very long time. And that's just their culture. And, you know, because and on the reverse side, they think that, you know, Americans will just say are very pushy, very fast. Want to go bang, 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 hurry up, you know, do things, you know, bigger, faster, smart, you know, bigger, faster, stronger type of a thing, you know.
You know, you missed your meeting, well, too bad, you come back tomorrow.
Yeah, that's there. It says, well, I'll be here tomorrow, we'll see you tomorrow. And, you know, they very much take their, like you said, they'll sit down, have some coffee, hey, how's the wife and kids doing, you know, what's going on here, and then, okay, it's a much slower pace that they get things done. So, you know, all the interpretations, so that's where I like where they're trying to think of these alternative explanations for things that seem very plausible. Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, it isn't that far out there to think. I mean, obviously, it's, you know, space. There's a lot out there that we don't know about.
Yeah, a lot's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Even our oceans, we still can learn a lot. We're always finding new stuff down there.
Oh yeah, it's funny. Everybody wants to look out that way, and there's not as much being looked inward, I guess, that they could be able to find.
Or even the hollow Earth theory.
Mm-hmm.
It's a theory that the Earth, because we've never actually seen the inside of the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
We just assume that there's a core and whatnot, which is probably true. I'm just saying there's a theory out there says it's actually hollow and that's whatnot. It kind of the whole drain to the center of the Earth kind of scenario.
Yeah.
Because there was a story, I think they might have mentioned it in Ancient Aliens at some point, where there's a hole by the North Pole that opens up into the Earth, and one guy was flying over and he saw this giant hole. It's all hearsay and whatnot, but if there's another alien or entirely different civilization lives inside the Earth with upside down gravity and whatnot.
Upside down gravity.
Like they live on the inside of the dome.
Oh, sure.
That kind of thing.
Pushed outward.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a cool idea, but you know, it's another one of those unconventional ideas that people like to talk about.
A lot of people like things a little more straight. No, this is the way it is, and you know, not let's explore. And I think that's a lot more in today's society. They want, you know, a lot of things more cut and dry, and I think it's a lot more of like your free thinkers.
Sure.
I guess that are, you know, they're the ones that are going to try and explore this. And anymore, it's like, okay, you're stepping away from the mainstream, so you're looked at as kind of an oddity. Where today, so much more today, more and more that you don't want to be looked at as strange, odd, weird, what have you.
When it's happened many times in history, like when was it Galileo said the Earth was round instead of flat. And they made him confess that he was lying in order to stay out of jail, because the church said no, we believe the Earth is flat because you can see the Earth is flat. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so especially you go back to and those were the some of the, I guess when writing became more prevalent, people started writing more and more things down. Those were your, like you said, the free thinkers. You get to Galileo and Plato and Da Vinci, and a lot more of the more radical thing. Albert Einstein.
Sure.
Who was the other one with that? Alexander Graham Bell.
Oh, sure.
A few of those. Ben Franklin, even. As far as those, those are. They got these weird radical ideas that.
Tesla.
These people, like you said, at the times were viewed as absolute weirdos, but look at how much of that stuff that we were using today. I mean, you go back and the light bulb, as far as that, the telephone and things like that. I mean, how many people today would go, I'd be lost without my phone? Well, you go back at the time, the guy that first invented, Bell, when he invented the phone, and we're like, what do you need that for? We could just write it down and send it by a Pony Express. Yeah. Well, what do you need this thing for? That's too expensive. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Where would you be today if you had to still send letters? Think about it. How much you use all that stuff today.
No Netflix.
Yeah.
Why stream it to you when you can go out to the store and buy one?
Absolutely.
I saw a video the other day on YouTube that says, how do you explain video stores to your kids?
Yeah.
Because there's no video stores anymore. Like, wait, you had to go out of your house. You had to go drive. And if the movie you wanted was already taken, you couldn't watch it.
Right.
Which seems...
What do you mean?
Out of this world now.
It's out? I mean, the closest thing to there's a few video stores out there. Not much anymore.
Not much.
But I mean, the closest thing that kids today would have to a video store is like Redbox.
Yeah, I guess technically that is a video store in a way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's about the closest thing anymore. I mean, you mentioned, Blockbuster, and they're like, what's Blockbuster? I mean, that was the place to go. Yeah. I mean, if you wanted to go rent a movie or whatever. Yeah. And now it's just, you just, I can just put this on my phone. I can watch it on my phone. Yeah. So, great to think here. I mean, as far as all these other, we tried to focus on the Nazca lines. Obviously, we got off topic talking about other things, but that's what we do.
That's what we do, yeah. Everything correlates to everything else.
But, it goes to trying to explain a lot of these other monuments around the earth. I guess the other one I did forget to mention, Stonehenge. That's another great one too. I mean, to move these huge, massive blocks to where they are
and balance them on top of each other.
Yeah, that's just all great things. So and amazing how they correlate, and you can find similar figures, depictions, hieroglyphs of things all over the earth.
Yeah. Which
it really does give theory that we were probably visited, and when will they be back in the future? Is it tomorrow, next year, 2,000 years from now, you know, when that may be, if at all, if it really is a plausible theory.
Yeah.
I mean, it is plausible, but I guess if it's real or not.
It would be nice to think so.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, who would these people be? I mean, I think it would be exciting to meet and, you know, meet an alien. I would probably be terrified right away. Yeah. You know, it kind of goes along with say, I think it'd be cool to see a ghost, but I would probably, you know, mess my pants.
Or even like Sasquatch or something like that.
Yeah.
They're like, shit, there he is.
That damn Sasquatch.
What would you do? Would you shoot him or would you chase after him? Or?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's great things to think about. And I'm very excited that at least a lot more people are taking this alternative thinking there. And I wish you know, a lot of the church, well, because they were going back, I mean, a lot of the similar religions around the world. You go to Buddhism, Hinduism, you know, Catholicism, all of the different religions, you know, they do have similar references to a lot of this stuff, which...
A lot of them have those flying machines mentioned throughout them.
Right. Oh, yeah, that was the one other quote they mentioned, the flying machine. Was that
I think
India?
It was India, with, so that must be Hindu.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the Vimanas, I think is what they call them.
Yeah, I don't remember the correct pronunciation, but it began with a V.
Yeah.
But yeah, they... the one guy even mentioned, he says, if I was to go to India and try and, you know, talk about, you know, the theories and stuff that he's thinking about these ancient aliens, so to speak, he goes, I'd be out of a job. They'd look at me and go, yeah, so what's new? They firmly believe it, that it's ingrained in their culture. They're like, yeah, they're just waiting for their return, basically.
What was it? Buddha had, 8 arms? Something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Blue skin, just like Avatar. The Navi.
Was that Ganesh?
What?
Was that Ganesh? I don't remember. I am not up on my Hindu and Buddhist gods.
Yeah. Well, I think Hindu has like thousands of gods, I think. So.
Similar like Greek or Roman mythology.
Yeah. I like those. Those are, well, I mean, it's because I like, you know, the Greek guy, because the story is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's say, you know, like you bring up Zeus throwing lightning bolts. That could be just some kind of an ancient way of saying, well, he was shooting something that looked like a lightning bolt.
Right.
You know, it could have been some kind of weapon. Or,
a laser beam.
A laser beam.
You know, essentially, you know, that.
Yeah, turn people to dust, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, vaporized them.
So yeah, I think it's great to look at some of these things in a different light and a different perspective. Mm-hmm. As far as the Nazca lines, it'd be great to really figure out what they were, why they're there.
Right. Which we still don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think they're great. It is fascinating, and if you find time, do a little researching and looking on your own. It is, like I said, we'll try and get some pictures up here with the podcast, but all you have to do is, you know, type it in, and you can find a few pictures here and there that do come up. Yeah. So, and the detail in them is quite amazing, especially when you think about that these were made like 2,000 years ago.
Very cool. Very
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So yeah, very little thought-provoking activity. So,
I think that's about it for Nazca.
So that kind of explains a few things there. Hopefully we provoked your thinking, your thoughts here a little bit.
Oh yeah. Hope you liked our new background here.
We're trying to get up, you know, we're trying to improve all the time.
Yeah. Here on the SciCast.
Yeah. If you want to, you can send donations. We can get a green screen eventually there. If you send donations. All of our viewers, you know where to find us.
So yeah, that concludes another episode here. As you know, I'm Dr. J.
And I'm Ben. Otherwise, we can we can go to Dr. B if you want to do that.
Dr. B.
We can have the two doctors here in the house, and we'll go there. So anyway, yeah, great to see you, and until next time.
Stay frosty.